The room felt quieter than normal. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that makes your chest feel tight. He stepped inside and noticed something was wrong immediately. Everyone was already there. Chairs were pulled close. Phones were placed face down. No one smiled. No one greeted him the way they usually did. He paused for a second, then slowly sat down. No one spoke at first. The silence stretched longer than it should have. He could hear the ticking of a clock on the wall. His eyes moved from one face to another, trying to understand why he was asked to come here so suddenly. Finally, someone cleared their throat. "We need to talk," a voice said. Those words alone were enough to make his stomach sink. He stayed calm on the outside, but inside, questions rushed through his mind. Had something happened? Was someone sick? Did he do something wrong? Then the real reason came out. "This is about your spending." The word spending hung in the air. Another voice joined in, slower this time. "We're worried about you." He leaned back slightly, still saying nothing. He had learned long ago that silence often spoke better than defense. They continued. "You've been buying expensive things. You travel a lot. You don't explain where the money comes from. You live like nothing can touch you." Each sentence landed heavier than the last. Someone else spoke, more directly. "We think you're heading toward a serious problem." A pause followed. Then came the word he expected but still didn't want to hear. Debt. They believed he was drowning in it. They believed he was hiding it. They believed his lifestyle was fake, built on credit cards and borrowed time. He looked down at his hands and listened. They thought his silence meant guilt. In reality, it meant patience. One person leaned forward. "This isn't an attack. This is an intervention." That word again, intervention. As if he had lost control. As if he didn't understand money. As if he needed saving from himself. They spoke about responsibility, about the future, about regret, about how fast things can fall apart. He let them finish. What they didn't know was how many nights he stayed awake planning. What they didn't know was how carefully every decision was made. What they didn't know was that nothing in his life happened by accident, but he didn't interrupt. The room slowly grew louder as concern turned into frustration. "Why won't you just tell us the truth?" someone asked. He raised his eyes. For the first time, he spoke. "I am telling the truth," he said quietly. They looked confused. "You just don't believe it." That only made things worse. One person shook their head. "We've seen this before. People always say they're fine, until they're not." That was the moment he realized something important. They had already decided who he was. No proof. No questions, only assumptions. He felt something shift inside him. Not anger. Not pride. Just tiredness. Tired of being watched. Tired of being judged. Tired of being explained. 2. The room went quiet again. He took a slow breath. Then he reached into his pocket. The movement caught everyone's attention. He pulled out his phone and held it in his hand, resting it on his knee. No one knew what he was about to do. He looked around the room once more, meeting every pair of eyes. Still calm, still steady. "Before you say anything else," he said, his voice low and controlled, "can I show you something?" No one answered. The air felt heavy again, but different this time. He tapped the screen, and just as the phone began to light up, the screen fades to black. The phone screen glowed softly in his hand. But he did not turn it toward them yet. He kept it close, almost like he was giving everyone one last chance to listen. The room was quiet again, but the tension had changed. Now it felt sharp, expectant. Someone spoke first. "What is that supposed to prove?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he locked the screen again and placed the phone on the table between them. "I want to understand something," he said calmly. "When did you decide I was failing?" No one replied. They looked at each other, unsure who should speak. Finally, one person said, "It's not about deciding. It's about what we see." That word "see" made him almost smile. They spoke about patterns, about signs, about how people who spend freely often hide stress behind confidence, about how success can sometimes be a mask. He listened carefully, what they called concern. He had felt as judgment for years. They remembered the trips, the clothes, the quiet way he paid bills without asking anyone for help. To them, it looked careless. To them, it looked risky, but what they never saw were the long nights. They never saw him sitting alone, staring at a screen while everyone else slept. They never saw the plans, the notes, the mistakes that cost him months of effort. They never saw how many times things almost failed. To them, his life looked easy. One person leaned back and crossed their arms. You never talk about money. That's not normal. He nodded. Maybe I learned early that talking too much invites opinions. That line landed harder than he expected. A few faces shifted uncomfortably. He continued, slower now. Every time I stayed quiet, someone filled the silence for me. No one denied it. Another voice spoke, softer this time. We just don't want you to end up hurt. He believed that part was true, but fear, he knew, could easily turn into control. He remembered the first time someone joked about his spending, how everyone laughed, how no one asked him why. He remembered the warnings that followed, the advice he didn't ask for, the stories about people who lost everything. He also remembered how none of them were there when he chose the hard road instead of the safe one. The room felt smaller now, someone asked. Why didn't you just explain earlier? He thought about that for a moment. Because every explanation needs a listener, he said. And I wasn't sure I had one. Silence returned. This time it felt heavy with reflection. He picked up the phone again, turning it slowly in his hands. I want to be clear, he said. I didn't come here to prove anyone wrong. That surprised them. I came because you asked me to, he continued. But before I show you anything, I need you to understand something. They watched closely now. When you judge someone without proof, he said, you stop seeing them clearly. He placed the phone face down. I've been careful with money for a long time, he said. Careful enough to let people think I wasn't. Someone laughed nervously. That doesn't make sense. It does, he replied. If you don't explain, people assume, and assumptions are easier than questions. The room was completely silent. No interruptions. No arguments. Just listening. He took a breath. This phone, he said, tapping it lightly, is not a flex. It's not a trick. He looked directly at them. It's just the truth you never asked for. He unlocked the screen again. The glow returned, brighter this time, but still, he did not turn it. Not yet. He wanted them to feel the moment. To sit in the discomfort of realizing they might be wrong. To understand that concern without trust can become something else. He stood up slowly, phone in hand. Before I show you what's on this screen, he said, I need you to promise one thing. They waited. Whatever you see, he said quietly. Remember how sure you were before you saw it. He turned the phone slightly. The edge of the screen caught the light, and just as the numbers were about to come into view, the moment freezes.
He did not turn the phone yet. Instead, he lowered it and sat back down. The movement confused them. A few people exchanged looks. They had expected the truth to appear instantly, but he was still in control of the moment. There's something you should understand first, he said. His voice was steady, but softer now. This didn't start with money. They listened. It started with time. He looked at the floor as memories returned. Years ago, when everyone else was building comfortable routines, he chose something uncertain. It was not glamorous. It did not look impressive. Most people wouldn't have noticed it at all. He worked quietly. While others relaxed after long days, he kept going. While weekends passed, he stayed home. While people shared moments online, he stayed offline. No one clapped for that part. There were nights when nothing worked. Plans failed. Effort disappeared into nothing. He questioned himself more than once. He never told anyone. Not because he didn't trust them, but because he knew doubt spreads fast. One worried voice becomes 10. 10 opinions become noise. So he stayed quiet. Someone in the room asked gently, why didn't we see any of this? He looked up. Because I didn't want to be seen trying, he said. I only wanted to be seen when it worked. That honesty landed deep. He explained how he learned early that money is not about how much you make, but how much you protect. He tracked everything. He planned everything. He said no to things he wanted so he could say yes later. Spending, for him, was never emotional. It was calculated. The clothes they noticed were bought once, not often. The trips they talked about were planned long in advance. The comfort they questioned came after long periods of sacrifice. But from the outside, none of that was visible. From the outside, it looked reckless. Someone leaned forward. But what about risk? He nodded. There was risk. A lot of it. He talked about moments where one decision could have ended everything. Where he could have gone back to normal and no one would have blamed him. But I didn't, he said. The room stayed quiet. He explained how he never borrowed money to impress anyone. Never used debt to pretend. Never spent to escape stress. When I spent, he said, it was already accounted for. That sentence changed the tone. Faces that once looked doubtful now looked curious. You let us believe you were careless, someone said. He smiled faintly. I didn't correct you. There was a difference. He admitted there were times he almost spoke up. Times he wanted to explain, to defend himself, to clear the air. But every time, he said, I asked myself one question. They waited. Do I want to be understood? He said. Or do I want to be at peace? The answer was always peace. He stood up again, phone in hand. I didn't hide the truth, he said. I just didn't advertise it. He turned the phone slightly more this time. The glow reflected on their faces. Someone swallowed. Another person whispered, so the spending was never the problem, he finished. He stepped closer to the table. The problem, he said, was the story you told yourselves. The phone screen was now almost visible. Numbers were there. Real numbers. Large enough to pause breathing. But still, not fully revealed. He took one last breath. This isn't about proving I'm right, he said. It's about showing you that quiet doesn't mean careless. He turned the phone completely toward them. And for the first time, they saw it. The moment the phone turned fully toward them, everything stopped. No one spoke. No one moved. The numbers on the screen were clear enough to understand, even without reading every detail. It was not a small amount. It was not a lucky month or a temporary high. It was stability. It was planning. It was control. One person leaned closer, squinting slightly, as if their eyes were playing tricks on them. Another slowly sat back in their chair, hands resting on their knees. The room, once full of voices, now held nothing but silence. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The truth was doing the talking for him. Someone finally broke the quiet with a soft, unsure laugh. That can't be right. He calmly tilted the phone again, letting the screen refresh. Same numbers. Same calm expression on his face. The laughter stopped. A few people exchanged looks. The kind that silently admit, we were wrong. No one apologized yet. Not out loud. But the shift was clear. The concern that once sounded confident now felt fragile. The judgment that once filled the room now felt heavy and misplaced. He pulled the phone back and locked the screen. That's it, he said simply. No explanation. No speech. Just 3 words. That's it. Someone whispered, how long? He didn't answer right away. He looked around the room, not with pride, but with honesty. A long time, he said. Another voice, quieter now. We thought. He nodded. I know what you thought. That sentence carried no anger. Only understanding. One person rubbed their hands together nervously. We were just trying to help. I believe that, he replied. But help needs trust. That landed deeper than anything else he had said. The room felt different now. Smaller. More humble. Someone asked, why didn't you stop us earlier? He shrugged lightly. I wanted to see how far the story would go. That made a few people look down. The truth was uncomfortable. They had talked about him as if he wasn't there. They had decided things without asking him once. He sat back down. I didn't show you this to win, he said. I showed you this so we could be honest. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't tense. It was reflective. One person finally spoke up. We should have asked, not assumed. He nodded. Another added, we didn't give you a chance. That one stayed in the air longer. He took a breath. I understand why you worried, he said. But I need you to understand something too. They listened closely now. When you judge someone based on what you see, he said, you miss everything you don't. He stood up again, slowly. I built this quietly because noise invites pressure, he said. And pressure ruins focus. No one interrupted. No one argued. The room that once felt like a courtroom now felt like a mirror. People were seeing themselves clearly for the first time. He picked up his phone and slid it back into his pocket. The moment was over. But the impact stayed. Someone finally said, "We're sorry." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was real. He nodded once. "I know," he said. And for the first time that evening, he smiled. Not because he proved something, but because the weight he had carried in silence was finally shared. Yet even then, something remained unsaid. A question hung quietly in the air. One that would change everything moving forward. He looked around the room again and asked softly, "So now that you know, what changes?" No one answered right away.
The question he asked stayed in the room. So now that you know, what changes? No one answered at first. Not because they didn't care, but because they finally understood how wrong they had been. One person shifted in their seat. Another looked down at the floor. The confidence they had earlier was gone, replaced by something quieter. Reflection. The room no longer felt like a place of judgment. It felt like a place of realization. Someone finally spoke. "We spoke for you, instead of listening." He nodded gently. "That happens more than people realize," he said. Another voice followed. "We thought we were protecting you." "I know," he replied. "But protection without trust feels like control." That sentence changed the tone again. They began to see the difference. The way concern had turned into pressure. The way love had turned into assumptions. The way silence had been mistaken for weakness. One person sighed deeply. "We never asked how you were actually doing." That one hurt more than the rest. He didn't say it, but they could feel it. He explained calmly that he never wanted distance. He just wanted space. Space to grow without commentary. Space to fail without an audience. Space to succeed without suspicion. "Not everything needs approval," he said. "Some things just need time." The room felt smaller now, but warmer. Someone asked, "Did it bother you?" "All the comments." He thought for a moment. "Yes," he said honestly. "But I learned something important." They waited. "People talk when they don't understand," he said. "And most of the time, they don't mean harm. They mean familiarity." That idea surprised them. They had confused closeness with permission. He stood and walked slowly toward the window, looking out for a moment. "When I didn't explain," he said, "it wasn't because I was hiding. It was because I was building." No one interrupted. He turned back to them. "I needed quiet," he said. "Not advice." The weight in the room continued to lift. Apologies came next. Not dramatic ones. Simple ones. "I'm sorry I assumed. I'm sorry I pushed. I should have trusted you." He accepted them without making it a moment. "That's enough," he said gently. "We're here now." That line mattered. It reminded everyone that the goal wasn't winning an argument. It was understanding. One person asked, "So what do you expect from us now?" He smiled slightly. "Nothing complicated," he said. "Just questions instead of conclusions." They nodded. Another added, "And more listening." "That too," he replied. The energy in the room had completely changed. What started as an intervention had turned into a lesson. Not just about money, but about respect. About letting people grow in their own way. He picked up his jacket, preparing to leave. Someone stopped him. "Can I ask one more thing?" "Of course." "How did you stay calm through all of this?" He paused. "Because I trusted my work," he said. "And when you trust what you've built, you don't need to defend it." That answer stayed with them. He walked toward the door. Before opening it, he turned back one last time. "I don't blame you," he said. "But I hope next time you ask before you worry." They nodded again. The door closed behind him. The room remained quiet. But this time, the silence was different. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. They sat there, replaying every word, every assumption, every moment they spoke without knowing. And for the first time, they understood something important. Silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes it's progress happening quietly. And sometimes the loudest proof of success is not needing to prove anything at all. He stepped outside and felt the cool air on his face. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing. The night was quiet. Not empty, just calm. Inside the room he had just left, people were still sitting in silence, replaying the evening in their minds. But for him, something important had already ended. A weight he had carried for years was gone. As he walked down the path, his thoughts moved backward through time. He remembered every moment when someone doubted him. Every time he stayed quiet when it would have been easier to explain. He never stayed silent because he was afraid. He stayed silent because he was focused. Most people think success is loud. They think it announces itself. They think it demands attention. But his success had grown quietly in ordinary days, far away from approval. He had learned early that not everyone deserves access to your process. Some people only understand results. That night proved it. He did not feel proud. He felt clear. Clear about who he was. Clear about his choices. Clear about what he owed and what he didn't. He realized something else too. He never needed that moment to prove anything. The truth had been solid long before anyone saw it. Over the following days, things changed. Not dramatically, but honestly. Messages felt different. Conversations softened. Advice was replaced by curiosity. People asked instead of assumed. They listened instead of warned. And when they spoke about money now, they did it with respect. But the biggest change was inside him. He stopped feeling the need to shrink around other people's comfort. He stopped feeling guilty for doing well in silence. He understood that being private does not mean being secretive. It means being selective. He thought about how many people give up too early because they feel watched, because they feel judged, because they feel pressure to explain before they are ready. He hoped they wouldn't. He hoped they would learn this instead. You don't need permission to build something meaningful. You don't need approval to be disciplined. And you don't need to explain your journey to people who aren't walking it with you. Time passed. Life continued. He still spent money carefully. Still lived simply. Still chose peace over noise. But now, when people looked at him, they saw something different. Not extravagance. Confidence. Not mystery. Control. And the people who once doubted him learned a lesson they would never forget. Judgment is easy. Understanding takes effort. And effort begins with asking the right questions. That evening became a quiet turning point. Not because of the number on a screen, but because of the humility it created. The room was silenced that day, yes, but not by wealth. It was silenced by truth. And truth doesn't shout. It stands still and lets the noise fall away. If there was one thing he would carry forward, it was this. Let people think what they want while you build what you need. Let your work speak when the time is right. And when that time comes, don't raise your voice. Just show the truth. Because the strongest response to judgment is a life that makes sense without explanation.